Welcome back, everybody. Wow, as I lose my iPad. John Aravosa's here. I've got my iPad for TikTok. TikTok, where are you? There you are, TikTok. So sorry I dropped you, TikTok. That was rude of me. Anyway, welcome back, folks. This is the Aravosa's Report. Off to a shaky start, but we're doing okay now. Hey, TikTokers. Hey, YouTubers, Twitchers, everybody else. Shifting my camera. There we go. Welcome, everybody. It's Friday night, October 7th. Very excited to be with you. Lots of news today. Scarier news today. Unfortunately, today's big topic is going to be nuclear war. always a pick-me-up kind of topic. But yeah, so there was that today. So we're going to have a little chat about Biden and nuclear war. Actually, a big chat. That's going to be our big topic today. Otherwise, as always, if you guys want to maybe start off by just saying where you are from, where you are hailing from, I think that's always a nice way to start. And I'm going to start in a minute anyway. But yeah, so we've got TikTok the regular way now. We've gone back to doing TikTok the regular way. So hello, TikTokers, on my iPad over there, YouTubers and everybody else that away on my laptop. That's why you guys will see me looking back and forth and back and forth. Anyway, let me do a quick little housekeeping, and then thank you for the hat and the mustache on TikTok. You're already beginning. I always appreciate that. A little bit of housekeeping, and then we will get rolling. As always, if you want to help my work and help support independent journalism, two biggest things you can do is follow and give me gifts. And by gifts, I mean on YouTube, etc. Use the super chat function if you would. And on TikTok, all those gifts, the funny things you put on the screen are actually really valuable. You help creators. That puts money in their pocket and helps me continue doing the work I'm doing. So thank you for that. And I will always try to do a shout out when I see the gifts on TikTok. You can also go to my Patreon, patreon.com/Aravosis. You can go to my store.aravosis.com. You know, the easiest way to find all of this, go to aravosis.com, mylastname.com, and you'll see all the different ways you can help out. Now, we had an auction. We've got an auction over on our Discord, which is discord.aravosis.com. And we just had an auction winner there. We've got a new auction up with my favorite Ukrainian patch. This one's my fave, absolutely. It says Ukraina on it. It's got the Ukrainian flag and the trident. Very cool. Like I said, my absolute favorite. That one's up. It's the discord.aravosis.com. And final point, and then we're going to get rolling, is I am going to be doing my first private video chat on the Discord for everyone who has donated, become a $25 a month and up subscriber. We're going to be doing that next Saturday in a week at 2 p.m. Eastern Time US. I'll be telling you more about that as it comes, but I just wanted to tell folks in advance, there's a handful of you all who are doing this, so just so you know. All right, let's jump right in. So the big day today, just for everybody to know, it is Vladimir Putin's birthday. Ironic, since we're doing a Ukraine update report here. Putin was born on October 7th. He turns 70 today. The Kremlin put out a tweet claiming that Putin has received congratulations from heads of state, the UN agencies, international organizations from all over the world. And basically everybody laughed because there is no way Putin received happy birthday from his vassal states. In other words, Iran, Venezuela, Syria, Belarus on his border, right? And probably a handful of the wimpier states around the world who have been trying to curry favor with Putin. But otherwise, please. The really big story today, and we've got a lot of other news I'm going to get to, by the way, but the big topic today, thank you for that on TikTok, is nuclear war. And I know kind of a downer topic, but you know what? Important for us to talk about. Biden said some stuff in the last night actually, that got reported today. It's got people pretty freaked out, and it's got me kind of pissed off. So I thought it was important that we talk about that, and then we'll get to a lot of other news with regards to Ukraine and the war. But let's start first with the threat of Putin launching a nuclear war. So what happened was Biden went to a fundraiser last night, and at the fundraiser, Democratic fundraiser, it was private, but you've always got to assume when you're president of the United States, or any politician really, that in today's day and age, when everybody's got a cell phone, someone is recording you. Well, somebody pretty much got out with the recording. And here's what Biden said last night. I'm going to read you some quotes, and then we're going to talk about why I think this is a problem, and also why it's got everybody freaked out right now about nuclear war. Okay. Here's Biden's quotes from last night. For the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have a direct threat to the use of nuclear weapons. In fact, if things continue down the path they've been going. Now, just to remind folks what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, I'm actually too young for the Cuban Missile Crisis, but we did study it in graduate school. In 1962, the Soviets at the time moved nuclear weapons into Cuba. And President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, stood up to the Soviets and said, you aren't going to do this, and basically did a blockade around Cuba. Now, naval blockade. Big deal. The Russians came and said, lift the blockade or we're going to war. We literally got this close to a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union over their attempt to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. The Soviets finally backed down. There's a famous movie about this and a famous book. 13 Days is the movie, and I think the book is 13 Days as well, or 13 Days in October, I think it's called. Well, the Russians backed down, the Soviets, but 6 months later, the U.S. moved some nuclear missiles out of Turkey. And the thinking is, I don't know whether it was finally ever admitted, but the thinking is that the U.S. reached a deal with the Soviets back, again, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviets agreed to move their weapons out of Cuba, and we agreed to move our weapons out of Turkey as a way of, helping them save face in the negotiations, giving them something back, okay? So that's what the Cuban Missile Crisis was. It was the one big time when the world was on the brink of nuclear war. Okay, thank you for the gift on TikTok, by the way. So Biden continues, we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Biden said Putin is not joking when he talks about potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming in Ukraine. I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. This was one of the two most important points of what Biden said last night that really freaked people out. Okay, I'm going to read this again. Tactical nuclear weapon are little nuclear weapons. Now, I know it's kind of silly to say little nuclear weapons. Thank you for the gifts on TikTok, by the way. Just trying, I'm on a roll here, so I don't want to interrupt too much, but thank you for those. Tactical nuclear weapons are smaller nuclear weapons. And basically, thank you for the hat, they are the kind of things you might use to take out a command headquarters in the field. They're not the kind of things you would drop on they're not the kind of thing you would drop on, for example, a city, because they're just too small, okay? So that's what a tactical nuclear weapon is. So Biden is saying, I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon, which, by the way, is what Putin is threatening to do in Ukraine, use a tactical nuclear weapon, and not end up with Armageddon. So Biden's saying, if he does this, we will have Armageddon, okay? The next sentence, Biden is talking about how we avoid putting Putin in the position where he thinks he has to use these nukes, okay? We are trying to figure out what is Putin's off-ramp. Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself in a position where he does not lose face? He's using kind of a double negative here, but what he's saying is, how do we find a way to put Putin in a position where he doesn't lose face and he doesn't lose significant power in Russia? Okay, get that? So Biden is saying we've got to make sure Putin doesn't lose face with the war, meaning losing face is an expression meaning embarrassment, shame. You've been shamed publicly, okay, is losing face. And how do we find a way that Putin doesn't lose significant power in Russia? So let me walk through why I've got a lot of concerns about this, okay? Even if any of Biden's assessment is accurate, and I'm not convinced it is, let's pretend everything Biden said was correct, his analysis of the situation. You don't say it publicly. You do not say it publicly. And saying it at a private fundraiser is saying it publicly, because you're not in the Situation Room in the White House behind closed doors with a security clearance, right? With the walls of the White House protecting you. You're doing it to a bunch of funders. He knew this was going to get out. Why tell people that we are worried about finding Putin a way to save face, about finding Putin a way to preserve his power at home, about finding a way to offer Putin a carrot not to use nuclear weapons? That empowers Putin. It gives Putin notice that we're worried, that we are trying to find a way to help him. We're trying to find a way to calm him down. We're trying to find a way to give him something. If I were Putin, I would be ecstatic hearing what Biden said. And again, I am somebody who's not a Biden critic. You guys know that. The folks on the right get pissed at me sometimes because I'm not a Biden critic, but I'm not a Biden critic. But you don't tell Putin this strategy of threatening nuclear war is working. You are scaring me, you're scaring the American people, and now I, the President of the United States, am going to try to find a way to make things better for you because I'm worried, right? So I think, if anything, it makes Putin more likely to threaten these nukes because Putin's seeing that it's working. It's seeing that it's put the President of the United States on edge, and it's made the President of the United States in a position where he's not talking about, by the way, any of you who have watched my show over the last several months will remember this. I have said from the beginning that Joe Biden doesn't want Ukraine to win. He doesn't want Russia to win. He doesn't want Ukraine to lose, but he doesn't want Ukraine to win, because from the beginning, Biden has worried that if Ukraine wins, it's going to be nuclear war. And I've said it from the beginning, and a lot of people got on my case for this. Not you guys. You guys have been very good with me, but a lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere got very upset with me for criticizing Biden on this. This discussion proves that. Now, here is why I don't think it's a good idea for Biden to say what he said. First of all, the only way that Armageddon happens. Now, just for anybody who's new here, this is the Arvosis Report. I do a daily report about Ukraine, usually Ukraine. If there's breaking news elsewhere, we talk about that too. But right now we're talking about President Biden's comments last night at a fundraiser, a private Democratic fundraiser. That comments went public and really freaked a lot of people out because Biden, well, I wouldn't even say seemed. Biden suggested that we are at the closest point to nuclear war since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. And he talked about repeatedly how we find a way for Putin to save face and how we find a way for Putin to not lose power at home. And I think it's dangerous what he did. Now, just to remind folks, if you can support me, I really appreciate it. The gifts on TikTok help a lot. The super chat donations on YouTube help a lot too. So let me continue going here, okay? First of all, the only way Armageddon is going to happen as a result of Vladimir Putin using tactical nukes is if the United States responds militarily. And my point here is that this is what Biden is thinking when he's saying this, right? When Biden said that if Putin uses tactical nukes, it's nuclear war. It's Armageddon. There's no way around it. Thank you for the gift on TikTok there. There's no way around it. What he means is if the U.S. responds militarily, it will become a tit for tat where we respond, then Russia responds, then we respond, and each response becomes bigger and bigger. For example, Russia uses nukes in Ukraine. The U.S. blows up the Russian naval fleet in Crimea. The Russians blow up part of our fleet in the Atlantic. We take out a naval base on the Russian mainland. Like all of a sudden, right? It keeps getting bigger and bigger. If we were not to respond militarily, if we simply put more sanctions on Moscow, they're not going to respond militarily to us. They're not going to. It's not going to be Armageddon. Thank you for the gift on TikTok. The only way it's Armageddon is if the U.S. responds militarily in terms of what Biden was saying. What really worries me is Biden was saying, I think, and again, if I think it, Putin's thinking it, Biden was saying it doesn't make sense for the U.S. to respond militarily to Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons and to Putin using nuclear weapons. The best way to get Putin to use nuclear weapons is to send the message to him, thank you, Billy, for that, is to send the message to Putin that we don't think we are going to use nuclear weapons, not nuclear weapons, any kind of military response to you, Putin, using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Again, I'm Putin. I am Vladimir Putin. And I'm thinking of using these nuclear weapons in Ukraine, right? Number one, I'm thinking, will this have any benefit for me? How does it benefit me? Does it give me a strategic advantage on the ground, a tactical advantage on the ground? Am I able to blow up enough Ukrainian military headquarters or troops to make a difference, right? That's the first analysis. Second thing, does it, for example, kowtow the Ukrainians into doing my bidding, for example? Think of the U.S. during World War II. right? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What the U.S. was hoping, and what happened, was that it would scare the Japanese enough that they would surrender, and World War II in the Pacific would end, right? That is very cool, by the way, on TikTok. Sorry, somebody just did a very cool whale on TikTok. I had to stop for that one. But the thing is, does anybody think that that's going to happen in Ukraine? That if Putin uses nuclear weapons, it's going to stop, right, the Ukrainians from fighting? Let's face it. We've seen the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are freaking amazing. Okay, if Putin were to use nukes in Ukraine, the Ukrainians would fight even harder. So that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it, right? So the other thing is going to be Putin. Well, actually, I mean, let me say this. This is why I'm not convinced Putin is even going to use nuclear weapons at all. I don't see the advantage in it. What I do see, and I've said this for a while now, I think the advantage for Putin isn't using nukes, it's threatening nukes. Because guess what happens? And this was proven last night. If Putin threatens nuclear weapons, the president of the United States is going to freak out and say, we need to do everything we can to help Putin save face, and to ensure that Putin doesn't lose power in Russia, and to ensure that Putin has an off-ramp from this war. And by an off-ramp, he means a way to safely exit the war and get something that makes him happy, right? Well, if I were Putin, I'd say, mission over, I won, right? I need to keep threatening nuclear war. Oh, God. I'm trying to look at my notes here. I had a lot of different points, but I'm sort of bringing up all of them anyway here. Here's the other problem. The other message that sends Putin. By threatening nuclear war with America, you get what you want. Well, why doesn't Putin threaten nuclear war with Poland now? Why doesn't he do it with the Baltic states? Hell, why doesn't he do it with Alaska, right? Clearly, the president of the United States is saying, look, if this guy threatens nuclear war, he means it. We cannot respond militarily to a nuclear attack. We need to give him what he wants, at least something that he wants, enough of what he wants, or something equal to what he wants that's equally important to him. To me, that means now other things in the U.S. foreign policy in terms of other areas of Europe, I think are at risk because of this. Let me see here. You know, one of the other points here too, one of the main theories, or one of the main points behind U.S. nuclear theory is called mutual assured destruction. And the idea is that the Russians can destroy us and we can destroy them. And it's true, by the way. I've always tell folks on my show here, one of the things that you've really got to keep in mind in terms of why there really, in principle, won't be a nuclear war between America and Russia is each of us have nuclear submarines. And these nuclear submarines are traveling the globe. The U.S. has, 14, something like this, right? And they've got hundreds of nuclear weapons, if not more, on these submarines. The Russians also have lots of nuclear submarines. The Brits have several nuclear submarines, and the French have several nuclear submarines. So what happens is, if, let's say, Russia were to attack us, and they use that scary sub everybody's talking about, the Belgorod, the one that went missing for a few days, and they attack us, well, we can attack them. We've got our nuclear submarines. The Russians could destroy every American city, every European city. Our nuclear submarines, 99% of them or 90% of them would survive, and we would be able to destroy Russia. And the same thing would happen in return. If we were to launch an attack on Russia and try to destroy all of Russia with nuclear weapons, Russia's got nuclear submarines. They would be able to attack us back and destroy us. That stops us from attacking them with nukes, and it stops them from attacking us. It's called mutual assured destruction theory, or MAD, ironically, and it was the basis of our Cold War relationship with the Soviet Union for, 40 years since the Soviets got nukes, 40 plus years, right? So what worries me is that Biden's kind of throwing that out the window by saying, oh no, if Putin uses any nukes, it's Armageddon, implying that we're not going to use nukes. The whole point isn't for us to use nukes when Putin uses nukes. It isn't for us to respond militarily when Putin uses nukes. It's to make it so that Putin doesn't use nukes. And traditionally, at least, the smartest way to do that, a lot of people thought, and I did too, was standing up and making it clear that if you do it, we'll do it. Now, we'll do it in this case doesn't mean we'll use nukes, but if you use nukes in Ukraine, we're going to respond militarily. Conventional weapons, right? We're not going to use nukes, but we'll use our Air Force. We'll use our cruise missiles. We'll take out your military base in Sevastopol. We'll take out your Black Sea fleet and destroy all your boats. We may even go after some of your soldiers in Ukraine, right? The Russians. That's what you got to do. Again, the goal here isn't to have war with the Russians. The goal is to have the Russians believe that if they cross the line in Ukraine, we will strike back in a way that will be so, quote unquote, catastrophic that they won't want to hit us back. Now, again, all of this is really scary topics, and I get that. Last little point I wanted to bring up, and then we'll go on to the rest of the news of the day. And then during the question and answer, I always do a question and answer after this. We can talk more about this if you guys want. Again, I know it's scary, but that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it drives me crazy. Do we really need to save Putin face? I mean, just to sort of remind folks, okay, we're talking about President Biden's comments last night at a fundraiser of Democratic fundraisers. And he privately, but again, he was at a Democratic fundraiser. He knew the comments were going to get out there, right? Biden said that we are the closest to nuclear war than we've been since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 with the Soviet Union. He said that if Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, it is going to be Armageddon. By Armageddon, he meant nuclear war, destruction of the world. And Biden said, we therefore are trying to figure out how to help Putin save face, how to help him find an off-ramp, and how to help him preserve his power in Russia. Now, is Biden right on those 3 points? Let's look at them in turn, okay? Saving face. Does Putin need to save face? Maybe. I mean, maybe. It's possible. I've got a law degree, and one of the things I often find in terms of the law, but also politics too, I've been doing politics for 30 years in Washington, D.C., is having to explain to people that just because you don't want something to be true doesn't mean it's not true, right? Like, I don't want us to help Putin save face. I think Putin's a jerk. I would love to see Putin embarrassed. I'd love to see Putin lose his job, okay? And more. I would love that. Do I think that's the best way to resolve this situation? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not. It's possible it's not, right? It's possible that we need to find a way to somehow placate Putin so that he can walk away from the war in Ukraine and be willing to walk away rather than say, I'm just going to go all in and make this a 10-year long and nuke Ukraine. And by the way, even if he doesn't nuke Ukraine, he could just drag this out for 10 years and kill a lot more Ukrainians. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you, in return, to save face, say, well, Putin, we're going to give you Crimea. We're going to give you Kherson, right? We're going to give you these different provinces. It could be, Putin, we're going to lift the sanctions and then some. On international trade, you've been wanting something. Maybe the U.S. will give you what you've been wanting on international trade all these years, right? There are other possibilities, potentially, of things we could offer Putin that aren't offering Putin Ukraine, okay? So maybe. No, again, it's entirely possible that maybe we do need to seek some kind of a deal with Putin in terms of making him feel like he walks away from Ukraine, but walks away with something else good, unrelated to Ukraine. I can see that. Second point, hang on a second, my notes here. Do we have to help Putin preserve power at home? That one I don't quite understand. I don't get it. Like, why do we have to help Putin preserve power at home? And you know what I'm hearing? What I'm hearing in terms of what Biden is saying, I hear Biden saying that he's worried that Putin, if Putin thinks he's going to lose his job or lose his life, because this is Russia after all, right? In the United States and in where most of you are watching, if a president loses their job because they lose a war, they retire. They'll be fine. In Russia, doesn't mean you're going to get to retire afterwards, right? So I hear Biden saying that Putin is worried about an existential threat to Vladimir Putin. And that's what Biden's worried about when Biden says, I want to make sure Putin doesn't lose power at home. Now, I guess the final point I'm going to make on this, and then I am going to continue with the rest of the Ukraine news. And then, like I said, we'll talk more about this nuclear war threat during our question and answer period at the end of this. I am worried. What worries me here is that Biden isn't just speaking out of turn. I think Biden is telling us something that he's hearing in his daily briefings. Biden is being told by people who know that Putin is afraid of losing. Putin is afraid of losing his job. Putin's afraid of losing his life. And that if Putin thinks all of that's going to happen, Putin is going to use nuclear weapons to try to somehow turn that all around in Ukraine. That's what Biden's being told, and that's why Biden said this last night. Biden, I think, made a gaffe in the sense that Biden shouldn't have said this last night. But Biden didn't make a gaffe, I think, in terms of Biden did not use the wrong words somehow. And, and basically Biden didn't say something and, oh my God, that wasn't what he meant to say. He used totally the wrong words. That's not what happened. Biden's mistake was saying what Biden believes, but also what Biden is being told. And I got to tell you, I think Biden's getting bad advice. And this is more me. My approach to foreign policy is much more of a tough approach to foreign policy. I do not like going to war unless we have to, but I feel like with Putin especially, and I've read up enough on Putin, and I'm sure any of you who have been following the news, Putin has a reputation of being a tough guy. And with Putin, whenever you try to offer him something nice, when you try to negotiate with him, he punches you in the face. Thank you for that. He doesn't respond to kindness. He doesn't respond to off-ramps. When Putin sees an off-ramp, when you offer Putin an off-ramp, he's looking for another on-ramp. He's saying, well, gosh, if you're going to offer me something because I threatened to nuke Ukraine, I'm going to threaten to nuke Poland so I can get even more. And that's what worries me about Biden's comments last night. All right, I'm going to wrap it up on that. We've got a little bit more of Ukraine news to give you guys before the Q&A. Just to remind folks, I'm seeing a lot of TikTokers tonight. Thank you for joining me, TikTokers. My name is John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. It's a show I've been doing every day, Monday to Friday at least, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. That's 6 p.m. New York City time. And we've been talking about Ukraine pretty much every day. Talking about the latest news, and I've been using my foreign policy background, my legal background, my politics background to try to give you guys a sense of what news I think mattered that happened, but also a sense of what it all means. Kind of using my political background to say, okay, and again, like Biden last night, I think what Biden did last night was a mistake. And that's my take. All right, guys. So let's continue with the news here. So tanks. So the UK Ministry of Defense, let me get my glasses, put out its analysis today and said that repurposed, captured Russian equipment now makes up a large portion of Ukraine's military hardware. Ukraine has likely captured at least 440 Russian main battle tanks and around 650 other armored vehicles since the invasion. Over half of this was the line that killed me. Over half of Ukraine's currently fielded tank fleet potentially consists of captured vehicles. So the British government is saying, their defense analysts, their intelligence services are saying that half of Ukraine's tanks they're using right now could be Russian tanks that they captured from the Russians. How's that for amazing? They go on to say that they don't see that situation changing, that the Russians are having such a hard time that they're leaving their equipment behind when they're trying to basically run away from the Ukrainians, routing them, and that they're only going to continue leaving more and more equipment. And finally, they said that it's an indication of the poor state of training and low levels of battle discipline. One of the things the Russians have been doing as well, when they've been fleeing the Ukrainians, they've been leaving a lot of ammunition. And I mean, I'm glad they're leaving ammunition, but one of the things you're supposed to do is blow up the ammunition when you leave. You don't just leave it for the Ukrainians to pick it up and use it. And that's what the Russians have been doing, which is kind of amazing. Let me look a second here because there were a couple super chat questions people threw in. Sassy is saying, did you see the latest news today? Ukraine police found another mass grave with over 500 people, all with approximately 20 torture chambers. I didn't see that. I did see that there have been increasing stories over the last several days of the Ukrainians finding more evidence of torture, more bodies, as they are going into these towns that have been liberated, these Ukrainian towns that are liberated from the Russians. But I didn't see that. That's insane. Wow. SHDW Frog is also saying in Super Chat on YouTube, first, thank you for the amazing Ukraine coverage. I jumped over from TikTok. Okay, welcome. Do you think the OPEC oil decision will have any effect on the U.S. actions against Russia regarding the war in Ukraine? God, I'm not sure. Okay, what the Frog is talking about is OPEC. I think it was OPEC Plus this week, but basically oil-producing countries, thank you for the hearts, by the way, on TikTok. Oil-producing countries got together and decided that they were going to cut back on their oil production in order to make oil prices go up. Well, what does that do? That means that oil prices will go up for all of us around the world, and it means our gasoline prices, our petrol prices are going to go up as well, which is not a good thing. They finally have come down. In the US, they've come down significantly. The average price, actually, I saw yesterday on the news, the average price was down to $3.80 a gallon, but it was up to like $5 a gallon, something really bad. That still is not cheap for America, right? It's probably cheap for a lot of you in Europe, but for us, that's not cheap, but it's cheaper, which is good. The only thing is, I'm not sure how that affects U.S. actions against Russia regarding the war. I'm just not sure. I will say this. The U.S. and Europe has agreed to this, but it's very complicated. Jessica, I did talk about the nuclear threat, but we can talk about it more during the Q&A in a minute, because I'm sure people are going to want to talk about that more, so we can. Thank you for the hearts there on TikTok. What the U.S. and Europe are trying to do is cap oil prices from Russia and set up a system where Russia can only charge a certain amount for their oil. It's hard to do. It's very complicated. I was reading today, and it deals with the people who are shipping oil, and they've got to guarantee that the oil being shipped is only at a certain price. And I mean, it's super complicated, and it's not even clear that they can pull it off. But this move by OPEC means that we are now going to be even more concerned about oil prices going up and about gasoline prices going up and petrol prices going up, so that I think there will be a greater effort to make this price cap work. But I'm not sure whether it has any direct impact on Russia itself. I don't know our policy towards Russia. Oh, hello, my Serbian friend. What is it? Knez? I did see this. Did you see Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin today's badass answer to the question, is there a way, what is the way out of the conflict? She is so cool. She is so cool. This is the Finnish Prime Minister. Was it Finnish? I wasn't sure if it was Lithuanian. It was the Finnish Prime Minister is interviewed and told about Biden's comments about trying to find a way out for Putin out of the war. And she gave this really quick, I should have pulled up the video. I had the video and I wasn't even thinking. I'm an idiot not to show you guys. And she goes, yes, there's a really easy way for Putin to get out of this war. He can pull out of Ukraine and go home. And she goes, that's how he can find that's his off-ramp. It was off-ramp was the quote. That's his off-ramp. He can go home. It was like, boom. It was really good. It was really good. Yeah, that was amazing, Knez. I agree with you. And thank you, by the way, for that. But that was absolutely amazing. Hang on here, scrolling down. All right, we got the tanks. Oh, here's another story I wanted to mention really quick. So Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite system for internet is having some glitches in Ukraine. And I wanted to bring it up only because I am no fan of Elon Musk when it comes to Ukraine, because I don't like the stuff that Musk has been doing recently, kind of siding with Russia. He put out this whole crazy peace plan that basically was pro-Russian, claimed that Ukrainian Crimea wasn't really Ukrainian, it belongs to the Russians. It was kind of crazy stuff. It was not helpful. But there's a story going around today that had people very upset, thinking that Elon got even with Ukraine by turning off the internet from Starlink, which is his satellite internet. And I thought I'd heard that wasn't the case, and I looked into it, and it's really not the case. The problem has been going on for several weeks now. Elon's crazy proposal was from earlier this week. So the stuff with Elon just, in other words, the internet got pissed at Elon. Ukraine got pissed at Elon 3 days ago. The stuff with the internet having problems has been going back a couple weeks. And what it looks like was happening is it was happening to the Ukrainians whenever they were taking over new territory. In other words, taking over their own territory, Ukraine, but territory that the Russians had possessed previously. And as soon as they crossed into the Russian territory, the occupied Ukrainian territory to take it back, their internet died. And when their internet died, it meant they lost their communications, they lost everything, and they were kind of in a panic because it was an incredibly dangerous situation for them. What they think was happening is that the Starlink people may have been being careful And they may have been making sure that their internet system was not working in the Russian occupied territories because they didn't want Russia to use it against Ukraine. So I just wanted to bring it up because as much as I'm critical of Musk in terms of everything he's been doing recently with Ukraine, this story predates that so that it doesn't look like it was Musk playing games. It looks like it was simply an issue of the border and moving on the border and taking the border, not the border, but taking back the lands that Russia had occupied and that they didn't want to help the Russians, in fact, which is a good thing if it's true. Having said that, this is still surmising. We don't know for a fact. So always good to keep a little bit of pressure on Elon to make sure the system comes back online and that that's not what the problem was. The Ukrainians are charging a number of people with treason for helping the Russians hold their referenda there. As you know, the Russians, held a number of referendum, a number of elections in Ukraine in the last week or two to try to prove that, Ukrainians want to be part of Russia. It was a total sham. Obviously, it was a totally stolen election. And a lot of the Ukrainians left because the Russians are occupying their lands. They didn't want to live under Russian occupation. They left so they couldn't vote. The Ukrainians are now holding the people responsible, Ukrainians who helped the Russians hold those elections, and they're charging them with treason, which I think is good. Iran is claiming, by the way, Iran claimed today that it did not send those kamikaze drones, the Shahed drones, to Russia. It hasn't supplied any of them. Tehran, listen to this. Tehran has never sent and never will send any weapons to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine, the Iranians said. Okay, it is a fact that these Iranian drones have been attacking the Ukrainians for a good week or two now. It's a fact. What is interesting is that Iran, and I'm not clear why Iran would be so embarrassed of supporting the Russians, because let's face it, Iran itself is an outlaw regime. I mean, Iran is currently beating up women nationwide who are protesting against the government in Iran having killed a 22-year-old woman because allegedly she had a little bit of hair sticking out from under her scarf and her pants were too tight for the religious police, so they killed her. And there have been protests actually tomorrow will be 3 weeks of protests, either today or tomorrow. 3 weeks of protests, really amazing the story of these women standing up and standing up to a really scary government, but nonetheless. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued that the Iranians are denying this. Thank you, G Money, for that. Last little funny thing I'll tell you is from Ukraine and from Kaliningrad, trolls, so to speak, but I mean trolling in the way that good kind of trolling, which basically means snark. Right? Snarkiness. Listen to this. So the Ukrainian parliament has turned around and recognized the Kuril Islands out north of Japan in the Pacific, recognized the Kuril Islands as part of Japan. Now, they are part of Japan. What happened was in World War II, the Soviets took these Japanese islands, which, they were fighting, we were all fighting the Imperial Japanese at that point, took the Japanese islands, kept them, and deported all the Japanese who were on the islands living there, kicked them all out, and the Soviets kept the islands. Sound familiar, I ask you? So the Ukrainians, in order just to be snide, decided this week to pass a resolution in their parliament saying that the islands belong to Japan and the Russians need to evacuate, just to be snotty, basically. The other one that really cracked me up is the Czech Republic. So the Czech Republic, right there in the middle of Europe, is now claiming that Russian Kaliningrad belongs to the Czech Republic. Thank you for that on TikTok. If you look at a map, at some point, you can do it now if you're able to while watching my broadcast. Go look at a map of Europe and Google Poland. That's the easiest thing to do. Google Poland. And you're going to pull up Poland in Google Maps and look to the northeast corner, so up and to the right of Poland. And you're going to see a little circled piece of land called Kaliningrad. It's right. You're going to see Poland. You're going to see Lithuania. Okay, Poland, Lithuania. And then you're going to see this little bit of land on the sea there. And it's called Kaliningrad. It is literally a portion of Russia that is in the middle of Europe, and it's this small little bit of Russia. Well, it goes back to World War II. The Soviets stole it, which again, this is what the Soviets do. This is what the Russians do. They stole it, and they've kept it as a part of Russia ever since. So what was it? Was it Königsberg? Count Death Toll is saying it was Königsberg. Well, the Czechs jumped in and said, and I meant to Google the history before I came on and I forgot. I'm sorry, guys. But the Czechs stepped in and said, well, actually, when you go back in history, the person in Königsberg was married. I don't even know the history here. But bottom line is, they say that originally it was a territory belonging to the Czech Republic, and the territory was called, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Královec, EC. I don't know in Czech whether that's like a ch or whatever, but Královec. And the Czech nightly news show did a weather forecast for the country of, Czechia, as they call it, Czech Republic. And they included on the side Kaliningrad, and they called it Královec. Just like we in the States might show America and then we show Hawaii and Alaska, they showed the Czech Republic and the little province of Russia, and they're now treating it as part of the Czech Republic. And I'm sorry, I think it's pretty funny. I know it's kind of petty and all of that, but it's just it's a nice way of just kind of sticking it through. And I will say this too, might freak Russia out a little bit too, which is not a bad thing. Okay, guys, that was a long one tonight. Let's go and jump to the questions. I didn't mention to you guys the best way to submit questions on TikTok is to use the Q&A feature. I mean, I can read your questions here, but they scroll by so quickly that I don't always see. Oh, Greek from Egypt. Hello, Greek from Egypt. Nice to see you. Kalaime, Christo. Königsberg, not Königsberg. It is Königsberg. That's what I thought. Königsberg, yeah. Thank you. On TikTok, go to the Q&A button in my profile and submit your questions there. Best way to do it. You guys, you know how to do it here. You can submit them here at the bottom. Let me actually jump right now. I am not a professor, just a political guy who's had too much education, I think. Let me see here. What do we got? Yeah, Nikolov is saying a car exploded near Federation Tower in Moscow. Multiple vehicles are on fire. Is there any confirmation of it for sure? Can somebody just check? Nikolov on Twitch is saying that there was reports that a car exploded in Moscow. I'd be curious if it's true, because basically at this point, might as well fill you guys in on this. So I reported the other night that the United States said that we now think that it was someone in Ukraine who blew up that car in Moscow about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and killed the daughter of a far-right nationalist, meaning nasty guy who kind of wants all Ukrainians to die. And his daughter wasn't much better. She was killed in a car bomb. The thought was that the bomb was meant for the father. She got in the car instead. He didn't come with her. And the United States made the rare, unusual announcement the other day that our government thinks it was somebody with the Ukrainian government. Daria Dugina was her name. And the father's name was Dugin, Alexander Dugin, I believe. The U.S. made the unusual move of saying this, of saying publicly that we have now determined that we believe it was the Ukrainians. What I think was going on, because obviously the U.S. wouldn't criticize Ukraine. Why would we criticize Ukraine, right, in the middle of the war? We're their ally. It looks like the U.S. is concerned that some faction in Ukraine that isn't Zelensky, that's some faction that he doesn't have control over, did this bombing in Russia. And the U.S. was very concerned about it. And I think our government felt here in the U.S. that Zelensky wasn't doing enough to stop it, and that we went public and said it to put pressure on Zelensky, because this bombing didn't get them anywhere. I mean, so what? They blew up, a far-right nationalist. Big deal. I mean, I could see, if you're a Ukrainian and you're vindictive, you want to kill the guy because he wants Ukrainians to die. But it doesn't help the Ukrainians in the war at all. It just doesn't help them at all. Now, the reason I brought this up is that if there is a situation right now in Moscow today where there's some car bomb going off, and I'm going to do a Google as we are talking, a Google. I sound like my dad. I'm going to do a Google. A car explosion. Hold on. Moscow explosion. Look here. Moscow says, oh, wait, no, that was 1999. Oh my God. You know what I pulled up? I accidentally pulled up the article of when Putin bombed a 9-story apartment building in Moscow that helped his rise to power. That is the craziest thing. I did a search for Moscow explosion. Washington Post, September 10th, 1999. Moscow says bomb caused deadly blast. More than 440 pounds of explosives, killed 40 people, injured 152 others. Everyone now thinks that this back in 1999 was a false flag event where Putin basically blew up an apartment building in Moscow in order to make it look like evil terrorists were blowing up Russia, and you need me, Vladimir Strongman, as your leader, right? Total false flag operation. I bring it up because right after the U.S. warns publicly that, okay, look, it looks like the Ukrainians did this car bombing in Moscow a month and a half ago, and they need to make sure they stop whoever did it. There's a car bomb in Moscow right after that. Maybe. I think it looks like, who knows, but I think it looks like Putin did it. Now, could be somebody else, could be this Ukrainian faction again. Who knows? Maybe there is a Ukrainian faction that Zelensky doesn't have control over. Maybe, but that sure looks a little weird to me. So I'm not seeing this, but I'm just not seeing this, guys. I believe if you're saying The Guardian, all right, I'm going to look at The Guardian really quick, and then that's it. The last little place I would check is my Twitter, because my Twitter folks are usually very, no. I'm going to look as I'm talking to you guys, I'll look on Twitter too, because my Twitter is usually very good for this. And there's usually a lot of good, my Ukraine Twitter is a lot of defense folks who are really good. Hang on, let's do a quick little look here. I like to sort of get the news stories. Nope. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody's got it from a reputable news source, read the article, because I ain't seeing it here. Yeah, nope. And I would think that war Twitter that I follow would be all over this. No, that's a little weird. It should be all over war Twitter if it was real. I'm not saying it's not real, but anyway. All right, guys, what else we got? Let me go to TikTok, to the Q&A box, and see what you guys have there. As always, guys, like I said, if you like my news here in the Aravosis Report and you like to keep me going, please go and follow me. Number one thing you can do is follow me on all of the apps that you are on all the social media. Second thing you can do is support my work on TikTok with gifts, on YouTube with super chats. You can also go to aravosis.com, my last name, and you will find my store. You can buy really cool Ukrainian-themed t-shirts, my podcast, lots of other stuff. Let me look here. So TikTok, Q&A, boom. Q&A. Has Biden lowered strategic oil reserve too much? Thank you for the origami on TikTok. In his effort to keep gas prices low. I don't know about that. That I don't know. I haven't seen sort of the analysis of that. Basically, thank you for that. The U.S. keeps a strategic petroleum reserve, a reserve of oil. And Biden tapped into it several months ago in order to try to get gas prices down. At the time, I think I read it might only be sufficient in lowering gas prices by 12 cents or something. So it wasn't a hell of a lot of money. It wasn't really that big. My guess is that Biden wouldn't have lowered it too much because he would have been worried about just that he's got to keep the reserves in there in case of a real crisis where all the oil gets shut off. But I'm not sure. Let me see here. Man detained near Moscow over setting fire to car with signs supporting special operation. Yeah, man setting fire to car is not such a big. A Molotov cocktail attack on a parked car in Moscow last night. Yeah, I'm not convinced that this Moscow story is a real big story here. What do you think of this? Deemer is saying the troops of Belarus and Russia are ready to deploy and carry out tasks for the armed protection of the Union state, the Ministry of the Republic of Belarus said. No one thinks Belarus is going to be invading Ukraine. Maybe. I think Putin has wanted them to, But Belarus, just for anybody who actually, I've got the t-shirt map, the glorious t-shirt map. So yeah, we've got it the right way. This is Ukraine. You go up here. This is Russia. Everything over here is Russia. This up here is Belarus, the country of Belarus. They're an ally of Russia. It's run by a dictator named Lukashenko. And Putin has been wanting Lukashenko to enter the war, and Lukashenko hasn't been doing it. And basically, he doesn't have a really great control on his country. Putin had to even enter several years ago and try to help out, and basically helped Lukashenko keep his job as dictator. And the thought is that people wouldn't stand for it if he tried to invade Ukraine. So I'm not convinced that's happening. I'm not convinced. 250,000 troops. They don't have it though, right? Has to invade with 250,000 troops. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by Justin. Or are you saying they would need 250,000 troops? Yeah, because I think they've got, what have they got, like 50 to 80,000 or something? I mean, it's not exactly, it's not exactly Ukraine. Yep. Dragan is saying that everyone thinks Putin blew up the buildings in Russia. I'm sure they did. Danielle, thank you for that. We want to know about DOD. Oh, yeah. Oh, the DOD update. Okay. I'll give you a quick little DOD update. Why not? This is actually a good way to kind of wrap up a little bit. So the Pentagon was asked today about Biden's comments last night about nuclear war. And thank you, David, as well. Oh, you guys are saying thank you all. That's very sweet of you. So the Pentagon was asked today about Biden's comments about nuclear war with Russia. Biden made very scary comments last night. We talked about them at the beginning of the show. Sorry. Although I will say this, the show is recorded on YouTube as well. So you can always go to YouTube. My YouTube is John Aravosis DC, John. My last name you'll see on all the apps here. So John Aravosis DC, and you can always find my show on YouTube afterwards where it's saved. And I save a podcast version over on SoundCloud, soundcloud.aravosis, which I'll do after the show. I'll put up the audio for this too. So Biden last night, actually, it's a good recap anyway. Biden last night, let me do the little recap of what Biden did last night, because we're getting towards the end of the show, and this was really the big story for today that I talked about, but I know a number of you are new. You may have come after we were already talking about it. Biden goes and does a fundraiser, a Democratic fundraiser last night. And he's talking to folks at the fundraiser, and he decides to talk about Ukraine and Russia and the threat of nuclear war. Well, guess what? Biden's comments went public. Reuters got a copy of them, or a recording more likely, because let's face it, you're listening to the president of the United States in a private, fundraising meeting. Of course, you've got your phone recording it, please, right? So Reuters gets a copy. Here's what Biden said last night. For the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have a direct threat to use nuclear weapons if, in fact, things continue down the path they've been going. He also says, we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. He says Putin is not joking when he talks about the potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming Putin's in Ukraine. I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. And he finally says, we are trying to find out what is Putin's off-ramp. Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself in a position where he does not lose face or lose significant power in Russia, Biden says. A lot of people, myself included, thought that was not a very smart thing for Biden to say. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you can, as I said, you can go on YouTube and see the recap of this. But bottom line, maybe we have to help Putin save face. Maybe. I'm not convinced, but maybe. But you don't say it publicly, because what Biden signaled to Putin publicly, he signaled to him that we are worried about Putin, that Putin's threats have scared us, that we are so worried about Putin and Putin's threats of nuclear war that we are now desperate to find a way to make Putin happy, right? That we're desperate to find a way to make Putin not lose power in Russia, quote. That we're desperate to find a way to give Putin an off-ramp, to give Putin a way to save face. Well, I'm Putin. I'm listening to that and I'm going, cool. I threatened nuclear war, and Biden is now trying to desperately find ways to give me stuff. That's great. Maybe I'll threaten even more nuclear war, and Biden will try to give me even more stuff. Well, anyway, went through we spent probably 20 minutes on this topic, so you guys can go check it out on YouTube. But the Pentagon was asked about it today. Here's what the Pentagon said. U.S. Defense Department Press Secretary Patrick Ryder said, we don't assess, so meaning we don't believe, that President Putin has made a decision to use nuclear weapons at this time. Many people in our government and in the international community have highlighted the fact that this nuclear saber rattling is reckless and irresponsible. Right now, the U.S. does not have any information to cause a change in strategic deterrence posture. So he's saying, we have not determined that Putin has made a decision to use nuclear weapons yet. Well, okay. I mean, yeah. So all that really means is the Pentagon is saying that as of this evening, we do not believe that this evening Putin is going to use nukes. Let me go even better. We've seen no indication that this evening Putin is going to use nukes. That's not really a very reassuring denial. In any case, I'm really pissed off about this. I really am. I'm really pissed off about what Biden did. I think it's a huge mistake. You're empowering Putin. And frankly, you're making nuclear war more likely because you're telling Putin, you know what? This nuke thing, it works for me. And actually, you know what? Here's the really scary thing for Putin. Putin's able to get all of this out of Biden by threatening nuclear war. Well, you know what's an even better way of convincing Biden that you're willing to use nukes against Poland, the Baltic states, maybe even France and Germany and England? Use them against Ukraine, right? Because then we don't have to say, would Putin use them? We'd say, Putin used them in Ukraine. So if he used them in Ukraine, why wouldn't he use them in Poland, right? That's what worries me. That's what worries me about it. I was thinking about this. I heard the news last night, didn't do a video, didn't do one in the morning even on this because I was trying to think it. And the more I thought about it and the more I read other people's responses about it, it just felt to me like this was a huge mistake by Biden. And I will make this final point and then we'll wrap up. Biden is, as I said, it wasn't a mistake. Biden didn't misspeak. Biden said what Biden believes. From the beginning of this war, Biden has not wanted Ukraine to win. From the beginning of this war, Biden talked about how we had to be careful what we send Ukraine because it would be World War III. And I told you guys, World War III in America, in English, World War III does not mean the war that follows World War II. World War III means nuclear war, the end of the world. The phrase World War III is a metaphor for the end of the world. Okay? It does not mean just a third a third world war. So Biden, you can Google it, repeatedly talked about World War III, repeatedly said it could be the end of the world. Remember, that's why we're not sending planes to Ukraine. That's why we're not sending the good NATO tanks, right? That's why we weren't going to do a no-fly zone. Everything was World War III. And I said from the beginning that I was concerned as much as I still give Biden, now I give Biden a B+. I gave him an A- before, now he gets a B+ after the comments last night because he has rallied the world. He took the lead. He put America back in the lead of pulling the world community together, which was important. He has certainly, I will say he's taken the lead, but I don't want to knock what the Brits have done, what the UK did with Boris Johnson and the British citizens in supporting Ukraine. The Poles, the Baltic states have been amazing. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. So all of them. But Biden, after 4 years of Trump and Trump backing away from the world stage and Trump saying that NATO doesn't matter, right? And Trump saying that Russia, Trump literally said, Crimea's Russian anyway. It was fine for them to invade, right? Biden came in and put the U.S. back at the center of the world stage. And that was hugely important. He and again, not just to take credit for America and to be a hegemon. but to say that America does have a role in the world. We can do good things, and we have a unique role to sometimes organize all the countries around the globe, that we can do that, and we did it. But what he did last night, I think, was incredibly dangerous. And I'm sorry, my final point, the reason I was saying all of this was Biden doesn't want Ukraine to win. He wants Ukraine to tie. Biden said 6 weeks ago, and again, I always get into trouble when I say this stuff. Not usually with you guys. You guys are very good. On Twitter, I get into trouble when I say this stuff. Biden, 8 weeks, actually now it was probably 8-10 weeks ago. And Biden is giving a speech, and he says, I paraphrase, but pretty close to this: we must not let Russia win this. Russia cannot win this war. And then later in the speech, he goes, we cannot let Ukraine lose this war. And I got on Twitter and I went, okay, actually TikTok as well. And I said, okay, so we can't let Russia win the war and we can't let Ukraine lose the war. That sounds like you're rooting for Ukraine, but I don't think it is. I think it's a very cute way of not saying Ukraine has to win this war. That's what you'd normally say. You'd say Ukraine has to win this. The Brits have said that. We have not. Biden was saying we need a really good tie where Russia doesn't win and Ukraine doesn't win, where Russia doesn't win and Ukraine doesn't lose. And what we found out last night, Biden was saying last night, where Russia doesn't lose. And that worries me. That really worries me. All right, I'll do one last look at my Q&A on TikTok because I was just asked. But otherwise, guys, I'm going to wrap it up because I am actually going to an event tonight at a Ukraine house here in D.C., which is very cool. And they're holding I guess, a monthly get-together or whatever for Ukrainians in D.C. and friends of Ukraine. So friend and I are going to go. We're meeting another Ukrainian friend there, so it should be a lot of fun. It's happening now, but of course I didn't want to postpone the show tonight. Would it be feasible to think that Putin, with the aid of Belarus, will do or try another attack on Kyiv since he loses in the south and the east? I mean, he could try. The problem is Russia doesn't have the manpower, or this will be the last question. Russia doesn't have the manpower or the troops to attack Kyiv again. They don't have the manpower or the troops to attack Ukraine anymore. I mean, they're losing. Now, Russia controls 20% of Ukraine. So let's not, as the French say, let's not exaggerate here, right? I mean, the Russians still hold 20% of Ukraine. But they're, hi, Facebook. Don't mean to ignore you on Facebook there, Annette. They've run out of weapons. I mean, they've run out of good tanks. They've run out of their best men have been injured and killed. They've got these new guys coming in who aren't even being trained, really. The new guys are terrible. The morale is terrible of these troops. Russia, there's not much left for Russia to fight with. So I don't see them starting a new effort to take Kyiv with, as the old joke goes in English, there's a joke where we say, you and what army? I mean, him and what army is he going to do this with? So I don't see it. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Thank you for joining me today. This has been great. And thank you so much, all the TikTokers. So glad to see the TikTokers joining us, but also the rest of you, the YouTubers and the Twitchers and the Facebookers and the LinkedIns. And there's somebody else I'm missing here. I know him. Twitter's there too. But thanks for joining me, guys. As always, you can go and check out my Discord at discord.aravosis.com. And you know what? Let me make it easy. Go to my link tree. My link tree is my link of all my links. Go to my link tree. It's aravosis.com. So my last name.com. You'll see it on TikTok. My name right there, Aravosis. The rest of you, it's the name I'm using for these things. Go to aravosis.com and you will find my Discord. You'll find my Patreon where you can help out. Thank you for that on TikTok. You'll find my store where we've got a lot of cool Ukrainian stuff, t-shirts and things to sell. My Discord, we're doing a lot of cool auctions, like for this really cool, real Ukrainian military patch. You'll see a lot of different ways you can get involved. So please join us. And the Discord, I just looked today, actually, we've got like 750 or 770 people on our Discord, which blew me away. Thank you so much, everybody. I just had no idea we had that many people. So very cool. So guys, thanks for joining me. We will talk about this more on Monday, I'm sure, because there will be more fallout about Biden's nuclear comments. I'm taking the weekend off because I always do on the weekends, but I will see you Monday again at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm probably not going to schedule these things on TikTok anymore because we do much better when I just launch them. But Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, I will be online on TikTok. And thank you, moderators, as always, doing God's work, stopping the evil trolls. So I appreciate that. Guys, everybody have a good night. Slava Ukraini. And I am going to go in a minute to the Ukraine house and have some borscht and probably vodka, good Ukrainian vodka. All right, guys, you have a very good night, okay? Thank you so much.